The Monster Study. Imagine this. It's 1939, a quiet orphanage in Davenport, Iowa, full of innocent children who have already lost their parents. They think they're safe, but something truly monstrous is about to happen to 22 of them. A well-known speech expert named Wendell Johnson wanted to prove his theory that stuttering is caused by criticism from adults, not by anything biological. He sent his graduate student, Mary Tudor, to the Iowa Soldiers' Orphans Home. They carefully selected 22 children. Some spoke perfectly normal. Others had very slight speech issues. They split them into groups. One group received praise and encouragement, but the other group, they destroyed. For months, every single time these normal-speaking children opened their mouths, Tudor would harshly interrupt them. "You're stuttering. You're doing it all wrong. Stop speaking until you can say it perfectly." They criticized every word, every small hesitation. They made the children extremely self-conscious and terrified of speaking. Children who had spoken fluently their entire lives began to hesitate. They started whispering. They covered their mouths with their hands. Some completely stopped talking. Many developed real, permanent stuttering and deep psychological scars, anxiety, withdrawal, and lifelong trauma. This wasn't an accident. The researchers knew exactly what they were doing. They were deliberately trying to create stutterers in healthy children just to prove a point. Years later, this experiment became known as the Monster Study, and the name fits perfectly. When the truth came out decades later, the University of Iowa had to publicly apologize. The state paid nearly $1 million in settlements to the victims and their families, but no money in the world could give those children back their innocent voices or their peace of mind. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Imagine this. It's 1932 in rural Alabama. Hundreds of poor African-American men are told they are finally going to receive free medical care from the government. They have no idea they are about to become part of one of the darkest medical betrayals in American history. The U.S. Public Health Service recruited more than 600 black men. 399 of them had syphilis. The researchers told them they were being treated for bad blood, but they never actually treated them. For 40 long years, from 1932 all the way to 1972, these men were left untreated. Even after penicillin became the proven cure in the 1940s, the doctors deliberately withheld it. They wanted to study how the disease progressed in the human body. The men suffered terribly. The infection slowly damaged their organs, their nervous systems, and their quality of life. Many lost their vision. Many developed severe complications. Some passed away from the disease. And heartbreakingly, the infection spread to their wives and partners. At least 19 children were born with congenital syphilis because of this. These men trusted the system. They thought they were receiving help. Instead, they were studied like test subjects, while their health was allowed to deteriorate year after year. When the story finally broke in 1972, it caused a massive national outrage. The experiment was immediately shut down. The U.S. government later had to issue a formal apology, and in 1997, President Bill Clinton publicly apologized to the surviving victims and their families. This experiment didn't happen in some faraway country. It happened right here in the United States, and it continued for 4 decades. J. Marion Sims, Experiments on Enslaved Women. Imagine this. It's the 1840s in Alabama. A doctor named J. Marion Sims, who would later be called the father of gynecology, is trying to develop new surgical techniques. But instead of practicing on willing patients, he uses enslaved black women who have no choice and no rights. He focused on several women, especially 3 whose names we know: Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy. These women suffered from a serious medical condition called vesico-vaginal fistula, which caused immense discomfort and social problems. Sims believed he could fix it through surgery. The horrifying part? He performed these experimental operations without any anesthesia, even though ether and chloroform had already been discovered. The women were held down during the procedures while Sims operated, sometimes for hours. He performed dozens of surgeries on the same women. Anarcha alone is said to have undergone more than 30 operations. These women endured extreme pain and repeated procedures over several years. Sims used them to perfect his techniques, which he later used to help other patients. Many historians note that he chose enslaved women because they could not refuse and because he believed their pain tolerance was higher. a belief that was completely false and cruel. Eventually, Sims did develop successful surgical methods that helped many women in the future. But the way he did it, by using the bodies of enslaved women without their consent and without pain relief, remains one of the darkest chapters in the history of medicine. Years later, this story sparked intense debate. Some see Sims as a medical pioneer, while many others view these experiments as a clear example of medical racism and exploitation. Statues of him have been removed in several cities because of this history. The Willowbrook hepatitis experiments. Imagine this. It's the 1950s through the 1970s at Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York. This was supposed to be a place that cared for mentally disabled children. Instead, it became the site of one of the most unethical medical experiments in American history. Dr. Saul Krugman and his research team deliberately infected hundreds of these vulnerable children with the hepatitis virus. They wanted to study the disease and develop a vaccine. How did they do it? They mixed infected feces into chocolate milkshakes and fed them to the children. They also injected the virus directly into some kids. Many parents were desperate to get their children into Willowbrook because the school was severely overcrowded. Some were even told that the only way to get their child admitted was to agree to participate in the research. The children had no way to understand or refuse what was happening to them. The kids developed jaundice, high fevers, liver inflammation, and long-term health complications. They suffered for months while researchers carefully observed and took blood samples. The experiments continued for nearly 2 decades, infecting hundreds of innocent children. When the public finally learned about this in the early 1970s, it caused huge outrage. It became one of the major reasons why strict rules for human medical research were created in the United States. People couldn't believe that disabled children were being used this way in the name of science. This experiment showed how easily vulnerable people can be exploited when no one is watching to protect them.